Yes, please.
This question is about Surah Yasin. Allah Ta'ala has said in Surah Yasin, إِذْ أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهِمْ مُسْنَانِ فَكَذَّبُوهَا فَأَزَّزْنَاهُ بِثَالِثٍ كَذَّبُوهُمَا فَأَزَّزْنَاهُ بِثَالِثٍ فَقَالُوا إِنَّا إِلَيْكُمْ مُرْسَلُونَ. إِذْ أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهِمْ مُسْنَانِ فَكَذَّبُوهُمَا فَأَزَّزْنَاهُ بِثَالِثٍ فَقَالُوا إِنَّا إِلَيْكُمْ مُرْسَلُونَ. Allah Ta'ala has said that He sent two messengers, and then taqseef was done against them, and then Allah Ta'ala sent another one. Could you kindly explain which part of land they came and what?
Again, is something better reason to say to you. An answer to such a question has to be prepared. To mention particular names of the people and the land, and in fact this verse is subject to difference of opinion as well. Some scholars have opined that this relates to certain people in a certain land, while certain others say no. It means that maybe Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is with her. Azaz Nahuma means they were honored by the third. So personally I am inclined to believe that here Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioned. Otherwise, in the first place it is not said that we Azaz are who? Bismani. God did not honor the first one with the second. Both of them were honored with the third. That speaks of the very high status of the third one. So I am inclined to believe that this is Ahmad who is mentioned here. So this verse has to be further investigated as to who are the first two. Are they Moses and Jesus Christ, peace be upon them? Or there are some others? So this is subject to further investigation, and it should also be given a full treatment independently. But I have shown you the way how different scholars treat this verse generally. Some tend to find in history a particular instance where three prophets came close one upon the other, following each other in quick succession, and they lived together. Some people tend to interpret this verse like that and find instances in history where they could find three prophets together, one after the other, but still living together. But I personally believe that it is mainly, maybe this is something has happened to that of that nature, but it carries the message of Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's coming and bringing honor to all those who preceded him, particularly two great ones. Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Hazur, I got two questions. One, the question is big, the answer could be small. One, the answer is small, the question is small, the answer could be big. I don't know which one first.
Better with the small questions, you think answer.
Exactly.
Because the answer will be a very minor role.
Would Hazur kindly explain what main principles are laid down in Islam for establishing the world peace?
In essence, you can say that a great stress is laid upon justice and the execution of justice. And the concept of justice is absolute in Islam. So unless absolute justice is exercised and is established, regardless of the relationship between you and the one on whom you are passing judgment. This is the fundamental for establishing peace. Secondly, the fundamental for establishing world peace is mentioned in the very name of Islam. Islam means not only peace, but a message or a behavior of peace, conduct of peace towards others. This is why Islam is best explained in the last sermon of Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam during Hajjul Wada. In that sermon he explained Islam completely, and particularly he laid stress on this aspect, that from now on every human being is safe from you. His honor is safe, his property is safe, his life is safe, and that is Islam. So if anybody is hurt in any manner by a Muslim, to that extent he loses his Islam. And if the world gets this message, everyone honors another man's rights and his property and his possessions and his honor and everything that belongs to him, then peace is automatically established, because that individual behavior ultimately develops into a national behavior, a national outlook. But if individuals are selfish and are not taught to respect others' rights, then ultimately the nations grow into monsters, and they trample upon other nations' rights and they don't consider it as injustice. They think justice is only treating your own people justly within the sphere of your geographical or political country. While, as I told you earlier, Islam presents the concept of absolute justice, which means regardless of what the color be of the people or their nationality or the state of their wealth or poverty, your relationship with such a people, whenever you dispense justice with injustice justly, keeping Allah in view. So that is absolute justice. Because all these things are lacking, so there can't be any guarantee for world peace. It is heading for a great catastrophe, which may be witnessed by this generation, because I see it coming very close to mankind. This is the subject on which I spoke in Switzerland when I addressed during my last visit to Europe. When I addressed the Swiss people, this was the main subject of my address. You can read the book and that lecture, then you will find all the references in the Holy Quran on this particular aspect.
So the book is available?
No, it's not a book, it's a small address lecture, which I think was published in Review of Religions as well. Is it in booklet form available? I think so. Check up, find out from the mosque. They will have it if it is published. Otherwise, you can find out in which Review of Religions edition it was published. The second long question with short answer, please. Yes, of course you should.
Hazur, if a person lends money for the sake of trade or business through a written agreement according to the teachings of Islam and fixes a rate of interest, at the same time undertakes to take a share in case of loss. Would Hazur kindly let us know if this is permissible?
Is interest permissible in Islam?
A fixed rate of interest at the same time undertakes to take a share in the case of loss.
Fixed rate of interest does not go with the second clause.
What I meant was, if they say that a person who lends the money...
In the first place, in your opening statement, you have already declared it to be an Islamic valid agreement, haven't you?
Yes.
So what are you asking about then? If in your opinion it is already a valid Islamic agreement...
Mazur, I don't know whether it is valid or not.
But you mentioned it in the first statement. Read it again.
No, what I said...
No, read it again please. Read the whole question again.
Hazur, if a person lends money for the sake of trade or business through a written agreement, that is my mistake according to the that should be omitted, I think.
Please ask. First omitted, then ask the question.
So Hazur, I will take it as omitted.
Okay.
I will again omitting that.
You better make it as omitted. Read it as omitted.
Yes, I read it.
Correct.
Hazur, if a person lends money for the sake of trade or business through a written agreement and fixes a rate of interest, at the same time undertakes to take a share in case of loss, would Hazur kindly let us know if this is permissible?
Fixed rate of interest and loss, they don't go together. According to Islamic jurisprudence, if an agreement is made between the two parties and that agreement has some clauses offensive to the spirit of Islam, then the agreement stands and the clauses go. They are considered as omitted and not valid. So if however unanimous the agreement be, I mean all the parties concerned may be Muslims and may unanimously agree to it and sign it, yet it will not be binding if they go to Qaza in case of disagreement later on. If they go to Qaza, Islamic Court of Justice, they would delete all those clauses which are offensive to Islam and read the agreement as if those clauses were never contained in that. Now this clause, which speaks of fixed rate of interest, is offensive to Islam, it will go. The only clause would be left would be they promise to share the loss, well and good, there is nothing wrong with that. If in an agreement both the parties agree to share the loss, what objection can Islam have to that? After start.
In a number of Muslim countries these days, they are modifying their banking system and trying to apparently eliminate the interest which they were charging the banks. And instead they have opened new system which apparently doesn't...
We also might do like that, but not to defeat the spirit, but to enforce the spirit of Islam. That is our intention.
Yes, sir. But apparently, suppose somebody does not wish to secure any interest from the bank, but if he has some money which is lying there, and the bank does not declare any fixed interest rate, but they say that they will be declaring a profit, which...
No, it is not the change of nomenclature. It is the change of practice which is significant and which has to be studied. If, for instance, all banks are compelled by the banking laws of various countries to deposit the bank's money or a certain proportion of bank's money into government banks with fixed rates. So their profit, whatever name they give it, would be at least partly interest. So when they give somebody something in the name of profit, that interest which they would have received from the government, under compulsion of course, that would be a part of that profit. So if it is understood that that money which comes as interest is not to be treated as profit and it is to be diverted to other sources which are permissible in Islam, then there is no objection. Otherwise it will be still objectionable, because if you mix even a drop of filth in milk, of course the whole milk becomes filthy.
Thank you, sir.
After that boy, the young boy, yes please.
So,
Right now.
when a woman wants to become a Muslim, when a woman wants to become a Muslim, how do we perform the bad?
Like men perform the bad, to touch the hand is not an essential part of the bad. You can perform bad in writing by applying your signature underneath after reading the conditions. And also you can repeat it verbally behind someone. That is the essential part. To touch the hand is not essential. So they can always perform the essential parts like men do. There is no difference between men and women in that respect. Yes, please.
It's about the same subject, so about like.
First of all, introduce yourself.
Yeah?
Introduce yourself.
My name is Abdul Karim.
From where are you?
North Road.
Huh?
North Road, Greenford area.
Are you Ahmadi?
Yeah. Sir, I'd like to ask my question in Urdu, probably that be.
Yes, go ahead. Ask me.
जैसे इंटरेस्ट की बात हो रही थी तो उससे मेरे को आज दोबारा ये बात याद आई है कि आमतौर पे हम जब मिडिल क्लास लोग हैं बैंक से हम
बिजनेस क्लास
बिजनेस क्लास में शायद ऐसे ही आते हैं, तो हम पैसे जो बैंक से लेते हैं कर्ज के ऊपर, इंटरेस्ट के ऊपर, जहाँ तक मुझे लग रहा है जो सूद लेना और देना आराम है, तो उसका फिर क्या है? हमारा तो कोई कारण नहीं।
The point is that we are in the midst of a monetary system in which we are made completely helpless, and we simply cannot avoid that involvement altogether. Some involvements we can avoid, some we simply cannot. So those which we can avoid should be avoided. Again, it's an individual decision sometimes. Some people are more firm in their principles and in their conduct as well. They think things are avoidable, while some other people in the same situation think that they are unavoidable for them. So in such circumstances, it is always best not to ask too many questions. Otherwise, the life would become very difficult, and every Ahmadi is not of the same standard that he can keep to the same strict rules and regulations. So let it be a loosely arranged affair where some play is given to individual decision. But those situations which are very clear and clearly laid down, that should be kept in mind, and such situations should always be strictly avoided. For instance, Hazrat Masih Maud has made it categorical, stated it categorically, that if you deposit your money in a bank and you get something as interest out of that, then that interest is totally forbidden for you for personal use. The only usage you can put it to is to divert it to the channel of public Islam, return it to God, as the Masih Maud has put it. Things are forbidden for human beings, not for God, because He is the proprietor, ultimate owner of everything. So He has put it beautifully, that you return it to Allah. And the best way to return it to Allah is to return it to His faith, which represents Allah. So if that money is spent in the cause of Allah, there is no harm. Otherwise it will go waste. Waste is bad in that sense. But for the personal use of any human being, it is totally forbidden. So those who keep those interests in the name of prophets are in fact shutting their eyes to a very clear injunction in which they were given no play, no choice. And they are acting criminally in that respect. And when you give that money to the community, for instance, to be put into the service of Islam, you cannot treat it as your chanda either. There is something which doesn't belong to you. If you give it as chanda, then it is belonging to you. So it should be treated as if it never was yours and can never be yours. Because it was nobody's property, so it should return to the rightful owner of everything, that is God. Yet there is a possibility of Ahmadis being involved in a situation where they have to trade through banks. And those trading channels are unavoidable. For instance, international trading. It's impossible to go about trading internationally without the involvement of banks, without going through the channels of banks. So that situation is also very clear, unavoidable. In between there are things which are on the borderline. Yet Hazrat Masih Maud has suggested a way of meeting certain situations. For instance, at one place he mentions that if you are forced to pay interest to the bank, if you keep a separate account of that interest, and when you are given some interest on the money you have deposited, then you can deduct that against the other. So if the ultimate value can be reached as zero, it's well and good. To that extent, your interest can be spent for your own cause, but in fact it would be against the interest you had given, so it should be treated differently in a different light. So to that extent you are permitted. Beyond that, as I said, there are so many shadowy things. I should not like people to inquire about it, because the Holy Quran gives us the principle. La tasalu an ashya'in in tubdalakum tasawwur. Don't cultivate the habit of asking too many questions, because if you ask the question and the answer is given to you, then it may be too difficult for you to follow. You may not like the answers. And while the Holy Quran is being revealed, it goes on to say, to clarify further, then if you put any question to the Prophet, that will be answered. So a warning is given. Under the same principle, you should conduct your habits, but don't intentionally avoid question when you know the answer. That is a different situation. I must clarify, because somebody may misunderstand me and find an excuse for committing evils. The fact is that those things which are bothering you, your conscience, are biting your conscience, they don't fall into this category. For them, Allah has made a very clear rule, which has been told to us by Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that rule is da ma yuriduka ila ma la yuridu, or words to that effect. The first part is definitely the wording of the tradition, that which bothers you, yuriduka means puts you into doubt of that which about which you are suspicious. Everything of which you are suspicious, and you yourself are inclined to believe that there is some harm in it. Leave that. To that of which you sustain no suspicion, of which you entertain no suspicion. So that is the general safe rule. After, please.
On the question of interest, it bothered me as well. I borrow money from the bank to run the business. I give the interest to the bank. But at the same time, my family got money. I can't raise the money from my family because they don't want interest. I think, in my view, if I take money from my father or my sister and give her interest, which I'm going to pay the bank, it don't.
That's wrong. No interest to be given by you of volition. There are two different things altogether. In bank, you are compelled. It is sometimes a matter of survival. Survival is not always individual. It is also a survival for a class or for a group. A survival in trade, in business. They are very important things. So for that, some things could be permitted. But when you have a choice of volition, you cannot give interest to any individual. That is totally forbidden. That is out of question. I have spoken on this subject at length in one of my sermons and told people that this is really practicing usury. In fact, it is the individual relationship more which is hit by the Holy Quran in those injunctions. And for that, Allah has given you Allah has provided you with a way out. Why don't you adopt that? Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam encouraged this, and it is based on the Holy Quran. This injunction of Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that if you borrow money from someone, it is always good and appreciated that without condition, when you pay back more than what you borrowed. And this was a consistent habit of Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He always gave the lender more money than he had lent. But it was not binding upon him. So if you want to give your sister or your father or your mother any money out of your own free will, you're most welcome. But it should not be conditional.
But the thing is, I feel much better giving them more. If it is
you give them as you please, but without condition. If you make a condition, then you are practicing usury. This is Islam.
Yes, just don't follow that. I can profit the bank. I can give the money to the bank, but I can't give to my sister.
Who says that? You can
not logical.
No, what you are saying is not logical to me. The point is, who prevents you from giving money to your sister? Nobody does. But for you to borrow money from someone who is also a Muslim and encourage usury between this relationship, if you permit this, the whole society would turn into a society of usury. There will be no end to it. Then you will defeat the entire purpose of the Holy Quran completely. This is why it is also discouraged to borrow money from the bank. It is not encouraged at all. If possible, you must avoid all situations where you must borrow money with the condition that you have to pay interest. Now, the question is not whether you should pay more to your friends or relatives or not. That is not the question. The question is whether you are bound to pay or not. Suppose you borrow money and your money is lost. You run into business difficulties and troubles, and ultimately you land up in a very difficult situation. So now the converse, conceive the converse of this. Does it satisfy your conscience that you borrowed money from your parents or your sisters and you are suffering heavily so that you have lost almost all your capital and still you have to pay more than the capital back to them? Does that situation satisfy your conscience?
No, that situation does come when the bank comes into it.
Of course, that's right. This is why I said that banking is not within your control. I started with this. Banking is not within your control, within your power. It is the international monetary system which has not been created by you. But when you permit individual transactions unusually, that is of your own creation. They are two different things altogether. For instance, to eat pork when you are dying, it is different. But to say that when I am permitted to eat pork in that situation, why shouldn't I eat pork when I am invited by friends? That is a more likely situation for me to enjoy pork. Why am I not permitted that? So it's not the question of your enjoyment. It is a question of principle. There it is a compulsion in the system of bank. There is a compulsion and the banking system is not of your making. If it is possible for the Ahmadiyya community anywhere to enforce this monetary system of its own, it will not be a system of banking based on usury. That I assure you. But when the entire monetary system is completely out of your control, you are not responsible for what they do. But when you promote these things within individual dealings, then you are responsible for what you do. Could you come to microphone?
My name is Saud Ahmad Khan. I am from California, Sacramento.
You are coming from California?
I am going to California. I am just coming from Pakistan.
From Pakistan.
Right.
And are you family?
Yes, I am. Sir.
Which family do you belong to?
I am grandson of Maulana Zulfikar Khan Gawhar.
From which?
Maulana Zulfikar Muhammad Ismail Khan was in India.
Muhammad Ismail?
Yeah.
For whom?
That's right, sir.
He was
in Hyderabad that time.
in Hyderabad. Right. You were in North.
Right. My uncle Maulana Abdul Malik Khan. I think it's not a question or anything, but since this topic is being so hot, I thought I will say some of my feelings about it. Islam always encouraged people to take money and put in business and give the profit. The bank does the same thing too. They always take the money from the people and invest in different organizations and different fields of business. But with the exception that they are having some masterminds who does create profit, they channelize their money in such a way that they only make profit. They have to draw some line somewhere for their own law and order maintenance to keep people from cheating them and things like that.
Listen, I understand your question, but this question has been treated by me at length in one of the early sessions here in London, where I spoke on the philosophy of interest. against the philosophy of Islamic monetary system. This question should be treated in a whole, not partly, like you have put it. Once you understand the differences and you understand the inherent dangers of the system, that system is to be rejected. This system is causing evil in the world to such extent that in fact all the great world wars are direct creation of this monetary system. If you study at depth and in detail what havoc is being played by the existing financial and monetary system of the world, and the banking system is mainly responsible for that, then you will understand the fraud played upon the people as well as upon the nations. All the poor nations are being made poorer because of this system. The lending and profit is just a mythical terminology. Lending is no lending, it is in fact butchery. And profits are no profits. In fact, when the banks give you profits, they are only in name. Because the banking system always goes hand in hand with inflation. Never without it. They are directly directly related to each other. And the result is that if you study cool-mindedly the profits which you get individually from a bank, ultimately, and compare those profits with the value of the money at the time you get the profit as compared to the time when you deposited your money with the bank, then you will understand partly what I mean. You know, once an Ahmadi asked me in Rabwal many years ago that there is a scheme by the United Bank, double your money in 6 years. He said it's such a wonderful scheme. You pay 100 rupees today and after a year you get 200 rupees. And you have doubled your money. Plus you can get 100, if you have deposited 100 rupees in 1 year, every year you will be given 100 rupees after that. So he said, what a beautiful source, unlimited source of income it is. So I told him to experiment. I said, buy a piece of something which you can buy for 100 rupees today. And deposit 100 rupees with that bank. After 6 years, try to buy the same thing for 200 rupees and then you will know what fraud has been played upon you. So it's all a fraudulent system. Money is in the hands of a few Jewish houses which play havoc with the financial system of the world. And the upheavals and the tides which come in the finances are so powerful and so strong and so wide in its effect that no poor nation can be saved from its impact. And they started playing havoc with the gold, for instance. That's all through banking system. Now, the position of dollar is being strengthened. To what effect? Ultimately, it makes many people poorer. Many speculators sometimes lose his entire property because of these things. And these things are not in individual control. Sometimes they are not even in government's controls. For instance, what is happening to the dollar should be studied in direct relationship to what is happening to the mark in Germany. Russia is playing havoc with the mark by flooding the market with mark and buying dollars in the international market. With the result that at a time would come when, to Russia's advantage, the dollars would be released. And when those dollars are released, then you can see what can happen. Those who through speculation have been buying dollars they would be left with just dust ultimately when it happens. Similarly, a time had come when pound was behaving exactly like that. It was gaining against dollar, and people started converting their dollar into pounds. And at every drop they thought now it would come back. And it didn't. It lost almost £1, full £1 within the last 2 years. Full $1, I should say. Previously, it was 2 point some dollars to a pound. And now, they are 1.26 to a pound. So you can imagine where that chunk has gone. It has gone into the pocket of those great money houses, which are found based in America or in some other European countries. And all of them are Jewish houses. So they go on playing havoc with the people, making them fools in the name of monetary system. They lend poor nations their money, some money, with the result that ultimately they can never get rid of the load of the interest, not to mention the capital. The entire South America has now fallen into this trap. And all the big powers of South America, some of them are much stronger and richer, much stronger and richer than Pakistan and other small countries like ours. They have been completely subjugated by these big money lenders. And now they are thinking of defying it somehow. They can't get out because once this happens, then the wars take place. This is what happened, in fact, prior to the Second World War. There were some political reasons, of course, immediately prior to the World War. But the main problem was financial and economical. There was a great recession, if you know the history of the pre-war period, economic period. A great recession had set in because of this banking system. And once the wars begin, then all these big houses, they begin to lend to the governments. And the governments play into the hands of these banks. Great revolutions are brought about in the country through these banks with evil intentions. So all this is a monster which must be destroyed if Islam gains power to the extent that it is within the power of Islam to destroy this system. Islam will not show any mercy to this system.
Just now, sir, you mentioned in context of interest that somebody has to take interest and it returns to the faith, it returns to the Almighty, to whom everything belongs. Does it also extend to the bribe taken in Pakistan? So,
no, bribe is not a must for you to take.
It's true, sir, but
if that is true, there is no but.
It's so rampant in Pakistan that nobody escapes these days.
This is why I say when a system has enveloped the whole society or whole system, then it's impossible for someone to remain completely saved from the influence. You can't protect yourself at times. For instance, please sit down. I understand there was once an Ahmadi station master in Sindh, near Larkana. No, not near Larkana, near Jack Baba. I remember it was Sultan Kod. I remember the name of the station. So I was making a tour on Waqf Jadid tour, going to the villages where we had established our centers and also to other Jamaats as well. So I was told that there is an Ahmadi station master, substation master is what at that time, and he accepts bribe. I was deeply hurt. I went to him and after discussing a few things, I said, I hope you don't tell lies. So he said, no, even if I did, I won't tell lies to you. This is the common way of saying in the Punjab. So I said, no, you shouldn't tell lies before anyone. But I know from the way you're speaking, you'll be honest. Tell me, do you accept bribes? Why do you have to? So he said, well, yes, I do. And I'm going to tell you why do I have to. If you tell me a way out, I promise I'll adopt that. So he told me that here the system of bribery has become almost a government taxation system. He says everything which is produced in this land, that is cotton and wheat, etc., has to be exported because there is no market. So there is no manner of carrying it to other places because there are no roads available, there is only train. So we make the rule and we dictate the terms to all these farmers because otherwise their produce will rot. So we say that if there is 1 rupee for the carriage or 1 mon, we say you must pay 3 rupees. You see? Instead of 1 rupee. And that is a rule, and with this money, this extra money is shared right from the lowest orderly in the organization up to the general manager. And this system is so perfect that you have to provide the money to your bosses and to your subordinates as well. So he says, okay, you know the outturn of this station runs into lakhs, and if I do not pay them their share, they will say that I have been dishonest to them, both to my bosses and to my subordinates. So I will be eaten up alive. And if I pay it from my pocket, I can't pay even for an hour's income of bribery with what I get in 1 month or even 6 months, That is the ratio. He said, tell me a way out, how can I do it? All that I can do, he said, was that I accept the bribe and I do not accept my share. Here your question comes in. That should that share, that very small share, be diverted to Allah or not? So I am rather hesitant in doing that. What I told him was that, all right, you don't accept your share and tell them to short circuit you. This is the best way. Apologize and say, all right, you accept this money, my bosses and my juniors, and I'm not going to do it. So don't give me anything. So he said, I'll try that, but I don't think they will agree to this. After a year or so, I met him again. I asked him, did you find a solution? He said, yes. I said, what the solution was? He said, I have quitted the railways. And I'm doing some business. So I prayed for him, Allah bless him with flourishing business. So that is the answer in fact. There is nothing else. Any other question, or shall we say the prayer now?